Hey everyone! Reading our book again. We have our author is Roald Dahl, and remember the person who writes the book is the author. Then we've got The Witches is our title, and the illustrator, the person who draws the pictures, is Quentin Blake. Now, we got to the chapter Summer Holidays, and if I remember correctly, we just found out about the boy and his experience with a witch. Do you remember? She came to him and he crawled up the tree and he screamed for his grandmama until she came. And the next chapter was called Summer Holidays. So, we have Summer Holidays. The Easter holidays came and went, and the summer term began at school. My grandmother and I had already planned to take our summer holiday in Norway, and we talked about almost nothing else every evening. She had booked a cabin for us on a boat. She had booked a cabin for each of us on the boat from Newcastle to Oslo at the earliest possible moment after my school broke up. And from Oslo, she was going to take me to a place she knew down the south coast near Arendelle. Ooh, like in Frozen. Where she had spent her own summer holidays as a child nearly 8 years ago. All day long, she said, my brother and I were out in the rowing boat, and the whole coast is dotted with tiny islands and there's nobody on them. We used to explore them and dive into the sea off the lovely smooth granite rocks. And sometimes, on the way out, we would drop the anchor and fish for cod and whiting, whichever one the fish is. I'm not all that sure, I've never eaten that type. But cod and whiting are both types of fish. And if we caught anything, we would build a fire on the island and fry the fish in a pan for our lunch. There is no finer fish in the world than absolutely fresh cod. I would agree with that. What did you use for bait, Grandmama, when you went fishing? Remember, bait's the bit you put on the end of the fishing rod that makes the fish bite it and then catch themselves on the fishing rod. It's like the fish food you put on the end of the fishing rod. Usually it's like little wormy worms. Yes, that is the technical term. Wormy worms. Mussels, she said. Everybody uses mussels for bait in Norway. Mussels are like the little fish in the black shells. They're delicious. I'd bite the fishing rod if they put mussels on the end. But you guys probably wouldn't like them. They might be a bit fishy when you're this young. Probably lots of you will like them as you get older. Mussels, she said. Everybody uses mussels for bread in Norway. And if we didn't catch any fish, we would boil the mussels in the salt pan and eat those. Were they good? Delicious, she said. Cook them in seawater and they are tender and salty. Tender means quite soft. You know, when you eat steak or chicken, you want it to be tender. You want it to be quite soft and not chewy. What else did you do, Grandmama? We used to row out and wave to the shrimp boats on their way home, and they would stop and give us a handful of shrimp each. The shrimp were still warm from having just been cooked, and we would sit in the rowing boat peeling them and gobbling them up, and the head was the best part. Ew. When I eat shrimp is like prawns, you know the little pink things? Or pink. And when they have their skin on, they still have their like legs and tails. But usually the head's the first thing I pull off. Yes, I pull off the heads of shrimp. I am a monster. That's what you do. The head, I said. You squeeze the head between your teeth and suck out the inside. It's marvelous. You and I will do all those things in the summer, my darling, she said. Grandmama, I said, I can't wait. I simply can't wait to go. Nor can I, she said. When there were only 3 weeks of the summer term left, an awful thing happened. What do you think the awful thing might be? They want to go on holiday, not going to get to go, maybe coronavirus. Maybe coronavirus hits, they don't get to go on holiday. Nah, that's not it. Have you thought? What do you think? Did anyone think maybe Grandma's old? Maybe something might happen to Grandma. Don't worry, she doesn't die. Well, not in this story, I don't think. My grandmother got pneumonia. Pneumonia is an illness in the lungs. So yeah, it's like I'm going to talk now when I'm not that sure. It's like, I know you get spots on the lungs. It's basically like an infection in the lungs that stops you breathing properly. She became very ill, and a trained nurse moved into the house to look after her, so they had to get special carers. The doctor explained to me that pneumonia was not normally a dangerous illness nowadays because of penicillin. Penicillin is a type of antibiotic, a type of medicine you take. But when a person is more than 80 years old, as my grandmother was, then it is very dangerous indeed. He said he didn't even dare to move her to hospital in her condition, so she stayed in her bedroom and I hung about outside the door while oxygen cylinders, so that's like the oxygen machines, and all sorts of other frightening things were taken into her. "Can I go and see her?" I asked. "No, dear," the nurse said. "Not at the moment." A fat, jolly lady called Mrs. Spring, who used to come and clean our house every day, also moved in and slept in the house. Mrs. Spring looked after me and cooked my meals. I liked her very much, but she wasn't a patch on my grandmother for telling stories. One evening, about 10 days later, the doctor came downstairs and said to me, "You can go in and see her now, but only for a short time. She's been asking for you." I flew up the stairs and burst into my grandmother's room. I threw myself into her arms. "Hey there," the nurse said. "Be careful with her." "Will you be all right now, Grandmama?" I asked. "The worst is over," she said. "I'll soon be up again." "Where was she?" I said to the nurse. "Oh, yes," the nurse answered, smiling. "She's told us she simply had to get better because she had to look after you." I gave her another hug. "They won't let me have a cigar," she said, "but you wait till they're gone." "She's a tough old bird," the nurse said. "We'll have her up in another week." The nurse was right. Within a week, my grandmother was up, thumping around the house with her gold-topped cane, like a walking stick, and interfering with Mrs. Spring's cooking. "I thank you for all your help, Mrs. Spring," she said, "but you can go home now." "Oh, no, I can't," Mrs. Spring said. "Doctor told me to see that you take it very easy for the next few days." The doctor said more than that. He dropped a bombshell on my grandmother. So he dropped some big news on the grandmother. Not an actual bombshell, not like, didn't kill the grandma. No, he dropped some news. A bombshell is like shocking news. And me, by telling us that on no account will we risk the journey to Norway this summer. They're not allowed to go to Norway. All that excitement, and they're not allowed to go to Norway this summer. "Rubbish!" my grandmother cried. Oh, that was a bit Russian then. "I've promised him we'll go." "It's too far," the doctor said. "It would be very dangerous, but I'll tell you what you can do. You can take your grandson to the nice hotel on the south coast of England instead. The sea air is just what you need." "Oh, no," I said. "Do you want your grandmother to die?" the doctor asked me. "Never," I said. "Then don't let her go on the long journey this summer. She's not yet strong enough. And stop her smoking those vile black cigars." Vile, disgusting. In the end, the doctor had his way about the holiday, but not about the cigars. Rooms were booked for us in a place called the Hotel Magnificent in the famous seaside town of Bournemouth. Bournemouth, my grandma told me, was full of old people like herself. They retired there by the thousand because the air was so bracing and healthy, it kept them. So basically, the air's so good there, it keeps them alive, apparently. So they believed, anyway, so that's what they believe. Alive for a few extra years. "Does it?" I asked. "Of course not," she said. "It's Tommy rot." Lies. But just for once, I think we're going to obey the doctor. Soon after that, my grandmother and I took the train to Bournemouth and settled into Hotel Magnificent. It was an enormous white building on the seafront, and it looked to me like a pretty boring place to spend the summer holiday in. I had my own separate bedroom, but there was a doctor connecting my room with my grandmother's room so that we could visit each... Oh, there wasn't a doctor connecting it. Silly me. I had my own separate bedroom, but there was a door connecting my room with my grandmother's room so that we could visit each other without going into the corridor. Just before we left for Bournemouth, my grandmother had given me, as consolation, I know we can't go to Norway, but hopefully this will make things better. That's what a consolation is like. I know it's not great, but this is the best I can do. Say you were on a diet and you weren't allowed to eat bad food, and you really wanted a pizza, and I said, oh, look, I know you can't have pizza, but I made you this this piece of, I don't know, toast with some tomato puree and a bit of sprinkled cheese on. It's not the same as a pizza, but you know, it's a tiny bit healthier, the brown bread, a little bit of cheese and a little bit of tomato. Yeah, do you see? It's sort of the same thing. A consolation. It's not as good, but it's something to say, I'm trying. A present of 2 white mice in a little cage. Oh, that's cute. You got some 2 white mice. And, of course, checking I haven't missed any pictures. Of course, I took them with me. They were terrific fun, those mice. I called them William and Mary, and in the hotel, I set out right away teaching them to do tricks. The first trick I taught them was to creep up my sleeve of my jacket and come out by my neck. Then I taught them to climb up the back of my neck onto the top of my head. I did this by putting cake crumbs in my hair. There we go, there's him training his mice. See the little mice there? Look, you've got one there. There. That one's coming out the back of his neck. No, that one's coming out the back of his neck. I wouldn't want cake crumbs in my hair, personally. I don't know about you. How long have we got left of this chapter? Do I stop now or do I... Yeah, this is a long one. Ooh. Oh, wow. I'll do it, finish to the end of this page. I used to hate when my dad used to say, I'll finish to the end of this page. No, don't stop reading. I hope you all feel that way. On the very first morning after our arrival, the chambermaid was making my bed when one of my mice poked his head out from under the sheets. My maid let out a shriek, "Ah!" that brought a dozen people running to see who was being murdered. Was anyone being murdered? No, it's a bit of an overreaction from the maid seeing a mouse pop out of the sheets and getting scared like that. Although, I think I would feel the same. In fact, I'm going to stop there and quickly tell you a story. Once upon a time, I was going to sleep in my bed, and I could hear the cat outside, and it started to scratch, and I didn't know what happened. I looked around, and I thought, I'm too tired to get up, and then suddenly my dad knocked. The cat had brought in a mouse, and the mouse had crawled underneath my door. The cat had let it go. The mouse had crawled underneath my door. So I was really scared. So but my dad said, he said to me, don't worry, Miss Dallimore, the mouse won't bother you. It'll be more scared of you than it will of it. So I left the door slightly open and went to sleep. Didn't think anything more of it. My dad had told me, my dad, who I trust, had told me there would be no mouse anywhere near me. I woke up the next morning, not even the next morning, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I could just feel something on my face. And I woke up, and you know when you can feel something and you don't want to look because you know what it is, and it was this little nose sniffing my face, and I did this. This mouse was on my face in the middle of the night. It was sniffing my face. And I jumped and the mouse ran down my bed and I screamed and I ran out of the room. I was terrified. Luckily the cat caught the mouse eventually. But oh my goodness, I was terrified. It was the worst thing. It was the worst thing that had happened to me, I think, ever, because I was so terrified. It was such a fright to wake up with a mouse on my face. I know that was nothing to do with this story, but I've decided I feel like the nurse gets to scream because I think that's an awful thing to happen. And seeing wild mice is scary. I know that these ones aren't wild, but doesn't know that, does she? Sorry, I hope you didn't mind me telling you my story, but I thought you'd like that one. Miss Dallimore absolutely terrified in the night because she had a mouse on her face. The maid let out a shriek that brought a dozen people running to see who was being murdered. I was reported to the manager. The manager is the person in charge. There followed up an unpleasant scene, a not very nice scene, in the manager's office with the manager, my grandmother and me. The manager, whose name was Mr. Stringer, was a bristly man in a black tailcoat. I cannot permit mice in my hotel, madam, he said to my grandmother. How dare you say that when your rotten hotel is full of rats anyway? My grandmother cried. Rats, Mr. Stringer said, going mauve in the face. He went purple. Oh, why did he go purple in the face? Why might someone go purple in the face? Purple like my jumper. How might he be feeling? Angry. Somebody has suggested there are rats in his hotel. How awful. His nice hotel? Surely not. Rats, cried Mr. Stringer, going mauve in the face. There are no rats in my hotel. I saw one this very morning, my grandmother said. It was running down the corridor into the kitchen. That's not true, Mr. Stringer cried. You had better get the rat catcher in at once, my grandmother said, before I report you to public health authorities. So before I report you for having rats. I expect there's rats scuttling all over the kitchen floor and stealing the food off the shelves and jumping in and out of the soup. Ooh, that's horrible. Imagine that. Having the rats jumping in and out of the soup that you're going to eat for your dinner. Ooh. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Right. Okay, I'll leave it there. I hope you had a nice time and I will see you, well, tomorrow. Bye!